Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to be doing the episode 16 of our board games we've been playing series. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about 4 specific games. We've got Tokyo Tsukiji Market, Bad Company, Burncycle, and Summoner Wars. And I have some questions and themes about these games that I want to talk specifically about. Now, the first game that we'll talk about here is Summoner Wars. I had the opportunity to play this 2-player head-to-head game, and this is a very interesting take on the mage versus mage system. I played 3 games so far. I played as the Tundra Orcs, the Phoenix Elves, as well as the I forgot the last character. I think I played the Phoenix Elves a second time. That's right. So we played many games. I've won 2 of them, lost 1, but they've been pretty close so far. I feel that the characters are exciting and interesting, but it is not quite as highly rated as some of the other dueling games. And there's one big specific reason, and that is the importance of interaction during other players' turns during dueling games. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, in Summoner Wars, the turn flow has you playing as summoners. You have this great turn sequence where you'll go down this path at the bottom. You'll get to play some monsters, summon them at your different gates, use them, move them around, build some buildings, and then attack with those characters that you've decided to summon. However, that's it on your turn, and then the other player gets to take their turn and do those same actions. They get to summon, move, attack, and it's a back and forth style. Unfortunately, there is no actual interaction during the other player's turn. And I find that a little bit needing. I think that that would keep you a little bit more engaged when it's not your turn because you can actually react and respond. Now, what do I mean by this? In particular, there's a game that I've been playing a lot of as well, and that is Unmatched Battle of Legends. In this game here, it solves this problem by whenever you declare an attack on an enemy, the opponent has the option to defend using a defense card. Now, these defense cards are either blue or purple. You put them face down and respond, and it's up to the player to read each other and position themselves in a way that they can utilize the cards in their hands on both players' turn. And so each player is constantly thinking of where they need to be and is ready to react whenever each other player is taking actions. I really like this concept as it's going to get you playing all the time, and you're never waiting to do something. You're always engaged. Now, the other game that does this really well is Super Fantasy Brawl. In Super Fantasy Brawl, you are going to have these specific cards called reaction cards, and each character has their own unique reaction cards. Some characters even have more than one. But these reaction cards can be used by any of your characters. However, you're paying for it with your action points. You only get to take 3 actions per round. And if you use a reaction in Super Fantasy Brawl, you have to spend one of your future actions in the next turn. I love this choice because maybe you really need to hold a certain position. So defending is really key and important. And some of the characters like Jacques Lebeau here, he can do some big damage even with reactions. I love this because it just means that you're always wondering how you can interact on both players' turns, that constant engagement. So I really like the way that these games do this. Now, Summoner Wars does do some great things when it comes to the summoning aspect. The asymmetry is wonderful. The combat is simple, and the turn flow is very straightforward. You do your actions, and then the other player turns. So there's not a really long time you're waiting for that turnaround, but I do like that engagement that occurs when you have that importance of interaction that occurs in these other dueling games. Now, during this downtime, you should be planning out your moves on your turn, reading your cards when it's not your turn, so you shouldn't have these huge issues when it comes to actually planning out and waiting. But I do think that these other games that you're consistently engaged and interacting solve the problem of potential downtime. So I do like Summoner Wars. This is a system that I am very excited to play. It's one that I'm asking to play quite regularly, which is why it gets that 8 rating. But I do think that it's missing that interaction that keeps it from getting into that 9 or 10 rating. But great game, Summoner Wars. And if you know any games with this interaction on both players' turns, please let me know. One that comes to mind for sure are games like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was younger. So this is a concept that I'm very familiar with and something that I quite enjoy. It's that feeling of you've activated my trap card. And it's a great feeling indeed. So that's the first game, Summoner Wars. Now we'll move on to one of my favorite games that I've played recently, and this is Tokyo Tsukiji Market. Tokyo Tsukiji Market is from Jordan Draper's series of games, and this brought to my attention the question of what game took another game system or idea you liked and changed it for the better. And what do I mean by this? Well, Tokyo Tsukiji Market, for me, reminds me a lot of the game Container. Now, Container in particular has you playing as owners of these large container areas, and these are going to be huge ships and you're sailing them around the table, picking up these different crates and then auctioning those crates off in this large area in the center of the table. And at the end of the game, you have a secret scoring card that determines what the different containers' values are. And it's a very simple system with a lot of interesting decisions. And I quite like it. So Container is a very, very solid game, in my opinion. It's one I do enjoy playing. Now, that being said, there is something missing in Container, and that's a spark to get you excited to actually be purchasing other people's commodities. In Container, the only thing you can do with those commodities are there's a board where you can trade them with an expansion for some cash, but that's very dependent on the other players, or you can send them to the center of the table in order to auction them for the points for the other players. Now, Tsukiji Market here tackles this in a very interesting way, and that's with the use of external markets. At the start of each game in Tsukiji Market, instead of just populating the board with those containers and those endgame scoring cards, you're populating the board with different markets, whether it be fish markets that sell different types of resources, or it's these external markets which allow you to interact in interesting ways with those resources that you're picking up. For example, you may have a card like this one here that says it's an aquarium, and this says that you can actually take fish and put them into the aquarium for a cash bonus. I love this idea because now not only are you keeping these resources for endgame points potentially, but you have other versatile ways that you can use these resources for. You can sell them for quick cash. So now all of a sudden you have inherent value that's dictated by the game in addition to inherent value that's dictated by the other players. I love this concept because you're not just on a whim trying to come up with some value that's determined just by the players, but you have that infusion of player choice with set core prices that are built into this game system, but those core systems are going to change based on the different varied setup that you choose. This is such a great system because you have just all of these options present in tandem with player decision and agency. Wonderful system. And on top of that, the fish characters themselves and the way that you're going to be fishing, they all have different ways that they interact as well. There's a lot of different strategies that you can pick up and take based on the different markets that appear on the board. I really enjoy the system. Now, bring it back to Container. In Container, the whole premise is you're picking up these goods, sending to the island, and auctioning them. When you go back to Tsukiji Market, there are actually some of the fish that sell that way. And then there are other fish that will sell in different ways. You can visit markets. You can generate passive income by holding licenses. You can purchase more boats instead of just having your one container ship and have a whole entire fleet of boats that are moving around and picking up fish and utilizing those fish. And some of the fish here do not even have to be sold to other players. Based on that randomized setup and based on the interaction between these pieces of the fish markets and the external markets, there are so many amazing situations and choices. And Tsukiji Market is going to be one that I am going to consistently ask to play in the near future and hopefully thereon. So this is currently has an 8 out of 10 for me. There are a little bit of issues when it comes to learning because it is quite a heavy game because of all of these small rules that can occur from the markets. But I think with more and more playing, this is going to be something that we gravitate to quite a bit. So very impressed with Tokyo's Tsukiji Market. So bringing it back to this question here, what game took another game system or idea you liked and changed it for the better? For me, Tsukiji Market has ultimately replaced Container for me for the game in this space that I want to play. We'll talk about a game here next on our next choice that also fits in a similar category that didn't necessarily replace the other game. So curious to hear what you think. And if you're here with me in the comments today, please let me know what you think about this topic. So that brings me to the next game. And our next game we're talking about is Bad Company. And as I mentioned before, there has been some comparison between this game and others, primarily things like Machikoro or Space Base. And we'll do a little comparison of Space Base here in a second. But Bad Company here, I currently have rated a 6. And what that means here is it's an okay game. There's some fun or challenge to be had, and I'll play it if I'm in the right mood. But my question for this game in particular is, when does streamlining a game go too far? In Bad Company, the premise of this one is you are owners of these mobs. I guess you're not an owner of them, you're a boss. But you are going to be sending these mobs to different locations. You're going to be going around this different area, getting tokens to place on these objective cards. And you do this in a Machikoro style. You'll roll a set of dice, and based on what you roll, you create pairings of those dice. For example, in here, you have a 4 and a 3 and a 1 and a 3, so you would be able to activate those 2 sets of cards that are on your personal player board. The other players at the table will pick one of those sets. So they have some choice even when it's not their turn, which I quite enjoy. My favorite part of Bad Company, actually, though, is the objective cards in the game. So this is one thing that does set it apart a little bit, and I think it's pretty interesting. As the game plays, you're going to be generating these symbols and placing them onto these objective cards, and each of those cards has some scoring condition, whether it be a symbol that will generate you additional points as you are playing during the game if you roll specific numbers, or additional endgame scoring criteria, like this one for if you have 7 or more of these objective cards complete or something like that, or maybe save cards. I'm not sure that iconography. But each of these objective cards is up to the player to choose, and I really like that choice. However, there are some steps in the wrong direction, in my opinion, and that has to do with some of the streamlining that has been done in the game. Now, the first thing that I want to point out here is the gang members. When you recruit a new gang member, you do that through paying coins and moving up on this board on the upper left here. So this upper left board has you picking up 3 cards from the top of a deck and picking one of those cards and putting it into your area. And that's it. And most of these cards that you pick are all going to have similar symbols. They're going to say, you get $1, you get this specific token, and those tokens will go on those objective cards that you're trying to complete. Obviously, this is going to lead you to pick certain objective cards that have a lot of those recurring symbols that you've been picking, but I don't think I'm a big fan of that. So when you're getting an upgrade, you draw cards, and you have to pick one of those. I'm going to compare this to Space Base now. Now, Space Base has a very similar mechanism. In Space Base, you roll dice, and you can decide if you want to use them separately or if you combine them together, and every player has that choice. However, the effects are different based on whose turn it is, and I do like that portion because you can choose to lean on heavy your turn strategies or put a lot of passive abilities. But in Space Base, you are going to have this large market of cards that you'll have lots of choices to pick from all of the time, and it's up to you how much money you want to spend on those choices. In Bad Company, they've streamlined this greatly, where you don't have this huge amount of choice, but in Space Base, you have all of these options, these interesting effects that occur from these, and that's where my question comes in. When does streamlining a game go too far? I feel that the fun of games like this is being able to recur these awesome special abilities, and I think that Bad Company is missing that, and I find that pretty unfortunate because I do think that that core system of selecting those dice and choosing the pairs is very interesting. But I do think that this large market is also not as clunky as it sounds because you have a lot of time between other players' turns to look at the different cards that are available. You also have the option in Space Base to see one card appear at a time. Once you see that initial flop of 15, then every time a new one pops out, you're going to be able to see more. And I really like that system because you're getting one piece of information at a time. So I think that the streamlining in Bad Company has stripped a lot of the choice and interesting decisions that I think come from a game like Space Base. So that's where I'm at with Bad Company. In addition, I also think there might be a little bit more analysis paralysis because you're picking that bonus card in the moment in Bad Company. But I'm wondering if the streamlined really helped the system here or made it something that's going to make it not one you really want to come back to. And that's where I'm at with Bad Company. I don't think it's one that I'm going to ask to play. It's definitely not going to be coming into our library. And I think that Space Base will be the current preferred choice over something like that. But that's where I'm at with Bad Company and Space Base as well. And we'll move on to the next game now. And the next game here is going to be the last game that we'll talk about. And this is Burncycle. Now, I've played a lot of Burncycle recently. I played 4 games of it actually in the last 2 days. And I've had so much fun with Burncycle. Burncycle is a stealth game where you're going to be taking these robots and you're breaking into corporations and you're trying to do so in the most sneaky way possible. And it's quite fun. And I think the big thing that I really enjoy from this game is the abilities of the characters and how they interact with the different missions. This is a very plug and play style nature where you're picking your different things. You have a character that will have its own special board. At the start of the game, you immediately get a bunch of level ups. I love that because right from the beginning, you're getting to customize your character. Each character has what's called their agent board, and you can choose what different dice you're going to be able to use. Each character has its own powers and abilities. And one thing that I want to talk about in particular are the abilities and keywords in this game, how I think it's made some cool improvements on that. So Burncycle in particular has lots of special abilities, but those are just on the player characters. And I love this because as you play Burncycle, you're going to be upgrading yourself consistently. However, the enemies have few keywords. And I think this is a really cool creative choice here from the Chip Theory Games team. In particular, you just got all of these characters that have one single special ability and then a way that they move. The way that they move makes a lot of sense. It'll show a picture of how they move. Like one goes to doors, one goes in a straight line back and forth. But all of the other characters will just have one uniform effect. And there are, I think, 5 keywords in total for all of the bad characters in the entire game. This is pretty awesome because you've reduced the enemy ability text, which means that you're going to have less in the moment lookups during this large, complicated game. It's going to be easy to start rolling and start playing, and your focus can go onto your character and the situation. I'm going to put it in perspective. One of my favorite games by Chip Theory Games, and one of my favorite games ever, is Too Many Bones. Now, this game here has you playing with a load of bad guys. You're going to have a hero that has so much text and so many different paths and choices that you can take, but when you are fighting, you are going to have a litany of enemies that has huge lists of keywords. For example, we've got Mischief, Signal, Careless, Engulf, Weaken, Hardy, Dive, Flight, Stun, Taunt, Thick Skin, Inspire. Now, this is on literally 8 chips. So how the heck are you going to be able to remember all of these different abilities and different keywords? So my question is, how many keywords are too many keywords? Because this is a real thing in a lot of games where it's keyword soup. You have to learn a whole new language to remember a game. Now, Too Many Bones came into my life when I was just getting into gaming and I was able to piecemeal these keywords. And I really enjoy the Too Many Bones system because when you pick a boss, you'll pick a type of enemy, and those enemies will have similar keywords. For example, if you fight the orcs, most of them have Thick Skin and most of them have Careless. So you only have to remember maybe 2 or 3 based on the enemy type. But the more different enemies you combine, you're going to have obviously a lot more keywords like you see here. There's a bunch of different enemies from different types here. So it's going to be more challenging, but you can very much ease your way into games like this with a variety of keywords. And Too Many Bones also helps with this because they have a big list. It's basically an appendix that gives you definitions and explanations of the different keywords. So I do like the way that Too Many Bones approaches this, but I think that there are some games that have way more challenges with this. Now, there are other games that also tackle this keyword challenge with explanations on the cards. For example, I really like the way that the keywords are explained in Blood Bowl Team Manager. You have an effect name, and then in parentheses, you have the name of the effect. And I really enjoy this because every player can clearly see what it does. You can pick up your cards and know exactly what they do, and I love this explanation. There's no real wasted space on the real estate of these cards. Now, obviously, when it comes to poker chips, you don't really have that real estate. You have all of this information that you need to condense into a small poker chip to keep that component quality and to condense everything onto that board. But I really enjoy the way that Burncycle was able to put the focus on the player's powers as opposed to the powers and abilities of the different security bots. So my question to you is, how many keywords are too many keywords, and what games do you really enjoy that have not a lot of keywords or manage their keywords well? So I'm curious to hear what you think on this. And if you have any comments or concerns on this, please let me know. But that's what I've been playing this week. Those are all of the games that I have been playing. I'm going to go ahead and list off all of the games that I've played in these last couple of weeks. I have 31 unique titles to go through, and I was even on vacation, so my game time was reduced quite a bit, but I've still been pretty busy, done a lot of repeat plays. And if you have any questions or comments about any of these things I talk about, whether you're watching on the stream now or if you want to talk later, once this has been posted already, please let me know, and I'll be happy to share about them. And then we'll go into some viewer comments right after this. So first off, we got Planet Unknown, Pax Pamir 2nd Edition, Marvel Champions, Hadrian's Wall, Welcome to the Moon, Clever Cubed, Railroad Inc., For Sale, Dune Imperium, Coconuts, Tokyo, Tsukiji Market, Bad Company, Fields of Arle, Hollertau, Feast for Odin, Burncycle, Summoner Wars, Unmatched, Scout, Foundations of Rome, Stockpile, The Reckoners, Blitzkrieg, Strike, So Clover, Dice Realms, Port Royal, Root, Bullet Star, Bullet Heart, Survive, Escape from Atlantis, and New York Zoo. So lots of different games that we're able to play, and a lot of games with exclamation points in their title for some reason, but 31 unique titles. Those games that really stood out to me, though, that I wanted to talk about, Tsukiji Market, Summoner Wars, and Burncycle, having a great time with them and want to play more. So we've got some comments here, one from Logan Sutherland saying that just got Summoner Wars 2nd Edition, Elbow Cough. I am having a great time with this, and I'm glad you just got it. in my game bag today. Hopefully I'll get a chance to play it. That 2-player count is a little challenging on my end, but I am finding more and more opportunities to play it. I did recently try the online implementation of Summoner Wars to actually learn the game, and I think it did a great job. So if you're still in the process of learning Summoner Wars, I would recommend checking it out. They have the 2 starter sets online, and you can actually try those before you play them in person. So some cool choices here for actually approaching and learning the game. But I think that the teach is actually very simple, and I think that Summoner Wars set does a great job in flow because it has that tracker on the bottom. You can use one of those tokens to track your turn progress. And it's neat because you can track the other player's turn as well, especially if you're trying to help them learn to play the game. So I'm quite impressed with Summoner Wars 2nd Edition, and I just ordered a bunch of burger token boxes for it so that way we can get it ready to go. Yeah, of course, Logan. Thank you for checking in and tuning in. I appreciate it. All right. I'll leave the stream up for a little bit more. And if you have any other questions or comments, please let me know. At this time, I'll just talk about some games that I am excited to play and maybe what's in my bag currently. So I have Planet Unknown, Tokyo Tsukiji Market again, and Summoner Wars 2nd Edition. Those are in my bag currently. Luckily, I've been able to play a lot of Unmatched recently. I was in Florida just a little bit ago and played a lot of Unmatched with my brother Jordan. He and I have been really into this recently. And Unmatched surprisingly makes a great game that you can stream. Last night, I had my tripod up and we were playing Unmatched for a couple of hours, actually. Ran through so many characters. We have all the content in our library right now, and I'm just going through every single character for Unmatched. So yesterday, I played the T-Rex, I played Robin Hood, I played Sasquatch, I played Little Red Riding Hood, Beowulf. Oh, who else did we play? Pretty much everybody. Muldoon, all the characters in the boxes, essentially. Lots of Buffy characters. I played, what's her name? Willow. Played Willow. She's pretty awesome. I think out of all the characters that I played yesterday, my favorites were actually Little Red Riding Hood and the other character was Muldoon. I thought those two were lovely. So Muldoon has this cool trap mechanism where he's putting all these traps everywhere, and he can move super fast, 3 movement, and he has all of these other allies that also have 3 movements. They just have so much range and control. It's so interesting. You keep them on the ropes, and you're playing that long game, setting up all these traps and having ways to activate them, getting extra abilities if people are next to them, and you're trying to corner people in to get that extra chip damage. Really cool. And then the other character is Little Red Riding Hood. Her whole ability and her whole deck has these icons on every single card, and she starts with her basket in her discard pile. Every time you play a card, it goes into the basket, and then whatever's on the top of your basket is going to trigger abilities on your other cards. So Red Riding Hood benefits from having a lot of cards in hands so you can create these big strings of combos, and it's a lot of fun. Now, I'll be straight up with you. I'm terrible at Unmatched. I played against my brother, and I've lost every single game. I think I've won once. I've won 1 game against him the entire time. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm trying really hard to play and enjoy and just have a good time. And I am having a great time. Even though I'm getting smoked, I have a great time exploring and enjoying the mechanisms. And I think that's what makes Unmatched so interesting is the exploration of those different mechanisms. So I'm loving Unmatched right now. And then we have a question from, hey, speak of the devil, there he is, Jordan. He says, this is my brother, he says that he wants to know the difference between Bullet, Heart, and Bullet Star. What's the difference and any suggestion? It's a great question. So let me go ahead and pull up Bullet here. Now, Bullet Heart has a lot of characters that if you're unfamiliar with Bullet in the first place, Bullet is one of my favorite games ever. This is a real-time game where you are going to be playing as these heroines trying to stop these bullets from raining down and destroying you. If they ever reach the end of your board here, you're going to take some direct damage. Incredible experience because this real-time puzzle where you're always making decisions and every choice really matters. You're using these pattern cards to match these different situations and symbols, and you're using the abilities of your characters. And every character is extremely asymmetric with their own heroine abilities and then an action system on the right side here. And these actions you'll use over and over again to mitigate and move the bullets to match your pattern cards to clear them. And in a Tetris battle style, you're going to send all the bullets that you cleared to the enemies. Now, Bullet Heart is very much I think actually Bullet Heart and Bullet Star are very similar, believe it or not. Both of them come with all of the equipment to play the core Bullet game, but each of them takes on that asymmetry in a little bit different approach. I think that in the Bullet Star, there's a lot weirder characters, a lot more unconventional abilities and ways that you're going to be getting patterns and effects. But I think that there is some of that weird unconventionality in the original one as well. The big difference of these two things are I would say it's the pattern cards themselves. So in Bullet Heart, every character has a hand. They're usually drawing up, and they'll utilize that hand to activate the different abilities on their character. But in Bullet Star, you have a lot of characters that use patterns in a very different way, the cards themselves. You have one character that can pick up their pattern cards and orient them in any direction. You have a character that starts the game with 30 pattern cards in their hand, something crazy, and it's like a big spell book, and they're able to use as many as they want every single turn, but that's all they have for the whole game, and it's pretty costly to recur those. So I think that the difference between Bullet Heart and Bullet Star is a bit more creative with how the pattern cards work, but I think that both are incredible systems. So I think Bullet Heart has interesting characters that have different abilities. But I think that there's a pretty good balance. And honestly, you can't go wrong with either. I would get whatever one's available currently because they are just full of great content and they both feature the same solo, cooperative, and competitive modes. So my recommendation is to get whatever one is available. And if they're both available, get both, because I do think Bullet Heart is a 10 out of 10 game. It's incredible. It really is. And this is interesting because Logan brings up another question here. Imagine all the games that were stolen, but you could save one game. Which would it be and why? This is a great question. So I actually had a situation that was very similar to this a little bit ago. We had a evacuation drill that occurred in our neighborhood, and it didn't occur, but there was an evacuation down the street. And so there was a huge brush fire here in Colorado Springs, and we could see the smoke from our house. So we were preparing for evacuation. I only got to bring 4 games with me because obviously there's more important things to bring than games. But with those games, the one that I would pick no brainer is my favorite game, and that's going to be Marvel Champions. In the bag, I had an IKEA bag. I put Bullet, actually, Sleeping Gods, Marvel Champions, and Too Many Bones. But I think that Marvel Champions is by far the game that I would pick. It's a comfort game, it's a lifestyle game, and it's a game that I can play with anybody. I can play it by myself, I can play with others. It's cooperative, so you never have that tension of someone getting potentially burnt by it, because it's all in good fun with this game. It's customizable to difficulty, but it's honestly a game that I am going to be playing consistently, and it's a game that I still do play consistently. It's my favorite game. It's the one that I find a game that I can use to challenge myself to just put myself in a specific zone or mode and just have a blast with. I really enjoy Marvel Champions. I enjoy the deck building. If you look on my channel, there's so many different videos that cover Marvel Champions and Bullet Heart. It's actually why I don't talk about them on these what I've been playing videos, because I play them all the time. And so all you'd be seeing is just Marvel Champions and Bullets and all these really games I really rate highly. They'd be all I talk about on here. So I try to branch out here, but undoubtedly, Marvel Champions is my favorite board game. It's incredible. The card play, it scratches all the right itches, and it makes it so you can play it as however you'd like. And thank you, Logan. I appreciate it. Yes, nobody got hurt here in the Franklin household. All is good. It was a little scary because we were going out of town, so we didn't know if it was going to be when we got back. So we even were thinking of bringing some of the stuff with us when we travel, just in case. But luckily, things are good. We got a lot of rain. That weekend, we actually had snow, which was ridiculous. So we had a huge snowstorm here in Springs when we actually left to go on vacation. So lots of rain, lots of snow. So I think hopefully we've got some more moisture in the air here. Hopefully not any more fires, not just in my area, but in general. There's been a lot of bad stuff going on when it comes to wildfires recently. But that is Marvel Champions. That's the game that I would pick if I were to just have one game in my collection. If you have any other questions, please let me know down in the comments. I'll leave it up for a little bit. I'm in a little parched to get some drink here. But if you have any questions, I'll leave it up for just a bit. All right. So the other game that I've been playing recently is Scout. And that's another one that's in my bag ready to go. And recently nominated for Spiel des Jahres. John from John Gets Games put it as his game of the year, which I was quite surprised about. But it is fun. I played a 3-player game of it, 4-player game of it, and a 3-player game of it. And this last 3-player game was really cool because I had a great experience when it came to the scout mechanism. So when you scout, you're allowed to take a card from the table and put it into your hand. And this seems like a very simple concept, but it works. This is a ladder climbing card shitting game where you are going to be taking. Oops, let me see if I find it. You're going to be taking these different cards and playing them in orders or in sets. And one of the big things you're trying to do is trying to play cards over other people's sets, because you take all the cards that you beat as points. However, I had a very interesting take happen on this game where the player, this is my friend Scott, he was able to consistently do nothing on his turn and just take scout actions. And then he played a couple of cards here and there, but then on his last play of the round, he played a straight with every single card in his hand. It was incredible. I couldn't believe this had happened. He had orchestrated his hand to do so, and he outpaced us with his patient playing of using that scout mechanism and collecting these cards. Really cool. I really enjoy this one. I don't know if I would qualify this game as my game of the year. I do think it's a fun time, but I think it's the big plays that you can find in Scout, to me, feel like they are the same. Like, you cannot, yes, a big run is impressive and cool, but outside of a big run, you can also get a big set. And those are like the two really big flashy plays that you can get in Scout. Other than that, you can do some really cool comboing, but it's never really apparent to the other players that it's happening. And you'll see players play sets and move their hand, but when you're actually showing something, the big impressive moments are the same, if that makes sense. It's a weird concept to get across, but the biggest and best plays you can make in Scout are playing a lot of cards, whether it be in a straight or in a set. And those are the biggest plays. And there's not much you can do aside from those huge, large plays. But that's everything. That's everything for our stream today. I'm going to go ahead and call it here at 30 minutes. Once again, if you have any questions or comments in the future about any of the games I talked about here or any of that huge list of unique titles, please let me know down in the comments below. But thank you so much for being here and for watching SideGame Strong, y'all.